I'll tell you a story.
Better, how long would you?
How long? It'll take at least minimum
an hour.
10 minutes. No, take 10 minutes for sure. This story, first is the story of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. The famous story of Kol Yeled Bochur. The baby was crying, and the Mittler Rebbe was so fatong, they didn't hear, and the baby fell, and the Alter Rebbe picked her up and rocked her to sleep. And he left, and the Mittler Rebbe didn't notice anything. He later was upset. Okay. This is a story about the Dal. If I came here for Hey Tavis, I'll tell the story. But since I'm not, I'll tell it here now. There was a kufa, the Rebbe was afraid that they're going to steal further Sfarim. Before they had the equal from the court, that you can't take any book. So they made a mishmoris, learning outside the Farbrengen Rebbe's apartment the whole time. And this Bochur, his name is Moshe, now he's a younger man. His name is Moshe Meir Vogel, he lives in Pittsburgh. He was a Bochur, and he was learning. And this was like the summer of Mem Hay, probably. And he went to England for a simcha, and he came back. He had asthma, but he had a very bad cough. And he was sitting and learning with a chavrusa. When a horse, suddenly, the Yama Klein comes up. And he has a big jar of Schneesens honey from Kfar Chabad. And he said, the Rebbe sent this up, and he says you should have this with tea. It's part one of the story. Part two is what happened on Hey Tavis itself. I knew, by the way, they knew that there's going to be the verdict then. Because I was leaving New York on Gimel Tavis, Sunday night. And Rabbi Krinsky's son told me, don't go, because tomorrow is going to be Didan Notzach. I said, how do you know? So he said, because the judge left the whole file on this case, all the proofs and the deposition, everything was there in the court. Because he was very busy with a different major case. But now, before he went for Chorah in December home, he took home that file. So they understood he's going to work on that and come back to the thing. And he did. But the only thing is, the Mishnah took them a day to type it up until he gave it, whatever. So the pilot was B'yam HaShlishi, Shalom Bakit. Now that day, Hey Tavis, this same Moshe Meir Vogel, was a shtickle korev of my marriage to Rabbi Yudel Krinsky. And he had it settled, or he had something he wanted to give in to the Rebbe, so he took it into Rabbi Krinsky next door. And Rabbi Krinsky's putting on his coat. It's 10:30 in the morning. He said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to the court. They found out that they have the verdict. So he said, who's in the car? Is there room for one more? And they took him. And he went. Yudel came out of the court, looked first page, and he looked to the back. He saw that, sucked in, and there was a cell phone in the car phone. The old cell phones, today, they're little. This was like a big contraption. In the Rebbe's car, there was a phone. Because if he had to contact, when I went to Greenland, he called up to the Mazkir in the middle, from the oil. So Yudel Krinsky calls up the office, and Rabbi Klein answers the phone. He says he wants the Rebbe to know as soon as possible. Tell the Rebbe that he downloads it. You got the thing. So Rabbi Klein goes in, and there's a rule with the Mazkirim that if they knock on the door to go in, but if there's another Mazkir that's in there already, you can go in. You don't have to knock. And Rabbi Groner was in there, working, whatever, not talking to the Rebbe. So Rabbi Klein walked in, and the Rebbe was fatifed in learning, like the middle Rebbe, like the Alter Rebbe, and didn't notice. So he banged his steps, walking up to the Rebbe's desk. No notice. He shook around a little. What could he do? He was there about 5, maybe 7, 8 minutes. Now, what he didn't know is that Rabbi Krinsky, after he called up the Mazkiris, right after that he called up the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin told Chaim Baruch Halberstam. Chaim Baruch Halberstam brought a big loudspeaker and music, and suddenly Rabbi Klein is standing there waiting to tell the Rebbe, and with the mold, with the ganze Chasana outside. So the Rebbe looked up and he says, "What's geschehen?" So he said, "You were called up." And he said, "Let the Danosach came out the thing." So the Rebbe said, "Tell him when he comes here, he should bring it into me right away." And then they went back into his sefer. Back in there. So why did I tell you the story of the Alter Rebbe? The Rebbe was so, you know, the Agmas Nefesh, you know the whole crank that we felt that whole year and a half until the Damlot. They ever heard about it? It was immediately back in there. Let me know when he comes in. Like, they're not going to waste an extra minute. But when a Bochur was coughing through the mahogany thick doors and upstairs, that's the Rebbe heard. And he said, "Give him money." That's just, I was in Pittsburgh. He was in Pittsburgh, Moshe Meir. It's Hakel. So it was last Sukkot, not this year. And he asked me to Farbrengen, one of the days of Cholamoy. And I knew the story from him, because they once brought me out there, "Hey, Davis." And he told the story. And he had the honey on the table. It's about 35 years ago. So I told him, "No, this year, you know, you get a little tiny drop. You couldn't make a leisure bazooka." And I wanted to save a little bit for my family that was back in the house. It was 1/4 of a drop to everybody. It was like the Rebbe's matzah. I have this thing from the Rebbe's matzah from years ago. When it comes to the Seder, you know, we are more, we still find I'm a speck. Tiny little, tiny crumb.
You still give out now?
What?
You still have now, like Rabbi's Matzah?
You come to my Seder, we look, and some years, we just notice there's something there. For one of the years, I keep the envelopes with the napkin or the plastic. And you just notice it. Talk about a speck, tiny speck. But you know something? You have the Rebbe. That's it. I'll tell you a story about the trial. The Rebbe called in Rabbi Yudel Krinsky and Rabbi Avraham Shemtiv to give them over to deal with it. So the Rebbe said, "Be'emes, I should have called in Mendel Futterfaz and the Mayor after. But they, you know, you guys deal with the things, I called you in. Now, That was a derech agavdik word of the Rebbe. Within a month, Avraham Shem Tov's daughter, Esther Golda, was engaged to Meir Afton's son, Mori Afton, and Yudel Krinsky's daughter was engaged to Yossi Futafas, Mendel Futafas' Einikel. And I asked Beryl Futafas, with that shidduch, he said it was not even read when the Rebbe said that. That's not pshat. Just the Rebbe, that derech agavdik word, a wertel.
Ich denke doch nicht lehnt, wenn du gemacht die ganze sein Tevis, wenn der ganze Messiebe ist am Sam. Und die Lawyers und die nicht lehnt hat gerät. Was hat nicht lehnt gesagt? Er gesagt, er mag eine Machleikis in Teire, in Chumisch, was ist da früher? Ein Lawyer und ein Doktor haben sie gekriegt.
Was?
Ein Lawyer und ein Doktor haben sie gekriegt, wer ist früher in Teire? Doktor sagt, der Doktor ist früher, weil man gedacht, Tom Chabek macht eine Operation bei Odomerischen. Der Doktor früher. Sagt der Lawyer, nein, der Lawyer ist früher. Steht da, oh, so ist es so, sagt er. Wer macht so, nicht Lawyer, sagt er.
He told us
Dat is toch wat de Melo, ja.
he was in London. Right after the Didan Nosach, and he was staying with. We went out with Peter Combs over shoulder. And Peter asked, did you consult the Rebbe? So he said they got messages, but one time they met the Rebbe. I think it was the other Samadani. And the Rebbe just told, he said, and what the Rebbe said, he said, the Rebbe told him one point, which didn't look so special. But it turned out that was the entirety of the Nusach, and that was the letter to Marx. So the Rebbe told them one thing: focus on the letter to Marx. That's what the Rebbe said.
Alexander Marx.
What?
Alexander Marx.
Yeah.
Rabbi, is the floor still
I'll
open?
tell you something else. A Bochur went on Merkishlichus. Saskatchewan, you ever hear of that? In this country. Saskatoon. And there, it was on Merkishlichus in the summer. There was a woman there who was not really Jewish. Her grandmother was, her grandfather. Grandfather was a Mashumid. And she was a cousin of Judge Tiffin. He had a relative Dalton. But, and she said, they were like liberal Jews, but she was very, very interested in Yiddishkeit, and her husband was Jewish, wasn't. But she said that the cousin, the judge, said that he was neuter, not they done Mokhtar, until he heard a statement of a remarkable woman, and that was the Rebbe. He said that to his relative. The word from the Rebbe. The Rebbe mentioned in the Sikha.
Ja.
That was the deciding.
Die belangt zu belangt zu
The books belong to the Chassidim because my father belonged to it. That's like that, she said.
Ja.
Stiesler wird doch hier.
Call it a day.